Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is LL3's podcast. My name is Craig, and today is December 23rd, 2013. I'm here right now, pretty mellowed and quiet in the swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today I'm going to be addressing the Federal Reserve's 100th year birthday of theft, which occurred on December 23rd, 1913. And this article was written by Bob Livingston from PersonalLiberty.com. And I will post this on my Spreaker page with this title. Alright, so I'm going to narrate it, and let's begin. Today is the Federal Reserve's 100th birthday. It is likely to slip by with little fanfare, though it should be the day that lives in infamy. It's more destructive than Pearl Harbor. In fact, it made Pearl Harbor and all wars in the last 100 years possible. Over 100 years ago today, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act. The act itself was conceived 3 years earlier during a secret meeting of moneyed elites at the U.S. Senator Proxy on Jekyll Island, Georgia. The conspirators were Senator Nelson Aldrich, the father-in-law of John D. Rockefeller, the Standard Oil Group; Paul Walberg, a German banker representing the German banking conglomerate M.M. Walberg of Hamburg, Germany; and Kuhn, Loeb and Company in the U.S. Henry P. Davison, a partner at J.P. Morgan and chairman of Bankers Trust Company; Benjamin Strong, vice president of Bankers Trust; Frank Vanderlip, chairman of National City Bank; and Charles D. Norton, president of First National Bank. Bankers Trust, National City Bank, and First National Bank were all part of the Morgan program of banks. Vanderlip was also a Rockefeller agent related by marriage and was a director of Rockefeller's railroad and lumber concerns. Like most all nefarious legislations, the Federal Reserve Act was passed in a rush. Congress was eager to head home for the holidays, so 2 days before Christmas, there was no stomach in Washington for a lengthy debate on the bill's merits. In fact, 28 of the 96 senators had already left Washington. The act passed in the Senate 43 to 25. The act got more support in the House, where 77 of 435 members had gone home. The vote was 298 for, 60 against. President Woodrow Wilson then quickly signed it. Wow, that's what he called fast track. It was also passed based on a false flag event. Propagandists for the legislation cited a desire to prevent a financial panic like the one that occurred in 1907 as a reason for its passage. The 1907 panic was precipitated by two events: inflation created in violation of the Department of Treasury statute, and action by the Money Trust, a group dominated by the J.P. Morgan firm and its allies affiliated with Rockefeller, the railroad baron Edward Harriman, and Kuhn, Loeb. Treasury Secretary Leslie Shaw wanted a central bank. Wall Street was pushing for one. Shaw created inflation by depositing Treasury funds in favored large national banks. The Money Trust also wanted a central bank, but their primary motive for creating the panic was to destroy the upstart Frederick Augustus Heinz. Heinz, along with C.W. Morse, had begun acquiring banks, and the two had incorporated a speculative vehicle named United Copper Company. The Money Trust called in their loans to United Copper, which set up a run on the Heinz-Morse Mercantile National Bank. It was this action that precipitated the panic, so it is often the case. The group that stood to gain most by the crisis participated it and then created the solution. And while they lobbied for its passage behind the scenes, in public, members of the Money Trust spoke against it and sold it as something it was not. The deception was necessary to fool the public, which was skeptical of a central bank. The Fed's creation by the Federal Reserve Act effectively legalized the money trust dominated by Morgan, backed by money from Rothschild's dynasty. and Rockefeller. Today, the Fed continued as a private entity with private shareholders. There is nothing federal about it. It is a monopoly over which Congress has little control. It cannot even be fully audited by Congress or the federal government, even though it ostensibly controls all U.S. gold deposits. What the Federal Reserve Act did was legalize theft. The Federal Reserve was given a monopoly on the issue of all banknotes, and all national and state banks could then issue only deposits. All deposits had to be redeemable in Federal Reserve notes. All national banks were required to become members of the Federal Reserve System. Sounds like involuntary servitude here, huh? As Murray Rothbard wrote in the case against the Fed, all national bank reserves had to be kept in the form of demand deposits or checking accounts at the Fed. The Fed was now in place as lender of last resort, and with the prestige, power, and resources of the U.S. Treasury solidly behind it, it could inflate more consistently than the Wall Street banks under the national banking system. And above all, it could and did inflate even during recessions in order to bail out the banks. The Fed could now try to keep the economy from recessions that liquidated with unfound investments of the inflationary boom. And it could try to keep inflation going indefinitely. At this point, there was no need for even national banks to hold on to gold. They could and did deposit their gold into the vaults of the Fed and receive reserves upon which they could pyramid and expand the supply of money and credit in a coordinated nationwide fashion. Moreover, with the reserves now centralized in the vaults of the Fed, bank reserves could be, as bank apologists proclaim, economized. An example, there could be and was more inflationary credit, more bank counterfeiting, pyramided on top of the given gold reserves. There were now 3 inverted inflationary pyramids of bank credit in the American economy. The Fed pyramized its notes and deposits on top of its newly centralized gold supply. The national banks pyramided bank deposits on top of the reserves of deposits at the Fed. And those state banks who chose not to exercise their option of joining the Federal Reserve System could keep their deposit accounts at national banks and pyramid their credit on top of that. And at a base of the pyramid, the Fed could coordinate and control the inflation by determining the amount of reserves in the member banks. Inflation is theft. When new money is created, the elites could use it before it gets into the economy and dilutes the buying power of your money you hold. Not one person in a million understands this. And they buy into government lies that inflation is necessary for a sound economy. They believe that inflation is rising prices. It is not. Since the Fed's creation, the dollar has lost 96% of its value. It is driving fast toward complete worthlessness. In his book, What You Should Know About Inflation by Henry Hazlitt wrote, inflation is the increase in the money supply and credit. The word inflation once applied only to the quantity of money. It meant that the volume of money was inflated, blown up, or overextended. As the money supply is increased, people have more money to offer for goods. But if the supply of goods doesn't increase or increases at a slower pace than the money supply, the prices of goods go up. Each individual dollar becomes less valuable because there are more dollars available. This leads to more of them being offered for a commodity. A price is an exchange ratio between a dollar and a unit of goods. When people have more dollars, they value less of them. goods then rise in price, not because there are fewer goods than before, but rather because there are more dollars available. Anything that artificially increases aggregates demand for goods and services is inflation. It could be lowering interest rates, increasing credit, or money printing, as the Fed has been doing with this so-called quantitative easing. This is the uncomfortable truth the money creators don't want you to know. They hide it because it keeps interest rates on national borrowing low. It allows the government to keep Social Security and other welfare payments and cost of living increases low. It allows the Fed to keep interest rates low for borrowers so as to encourage a phony expansion of a debt-independent economy. And it props up to the stock market, which helps Wall Street and gives the illusion of prosperity. Inflation, which is really devaluation of currency, is the perfect crime. The money creators steal the purchasing power of your paper money no matter where it is. They do this by pouring more water in the milk, diluting the value of all money by printing more. It is nothing more than a hidden tax. For this, we can thank the Fed. Very happy birthday wishes to us. And some of the additional sources he recommends: The Federal Reserve Conspiracy by Anthony C. Hutton, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, and The Federal Reserve Hoax by Wycliffe B. Venard Sr. If you want to watch some videos, they have one. Just engine search it, The Creature from Jekyll Island. They have a documentary on that as well. Plus, the late Aaron Russo, who did a fantastic documentary entitled America, Freedom to Fascism. It should be under freedomtofascism.org. Go to YouTube, etc. You can't miss it. Just type that in on your search engine, and you'll be surprised, man. People are learning. A spiritual awakening is in progress. And only thing I could say, those bastards need to go to prison. Period. It's called treason. Alright? But they're aiding and comforting the enemy. Part of the whole global banking system. Because an example of this happened in Germany during the Weimar Republic, happened in Argentina, Zimbabwe, and a few other nations. And now Japan is following that same trend as well. Just print more money into thin air. Fiat in Latin means how far can it go? And first thing I can really recommend is let's read the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. Article 1, Section 8 is mainly under legislative powers, congressional powers to be exact. And we'll just start by saying here, in Section 8, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide it for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. And we will hit the first clause, to borrow money on the credit of the United States. And we'll just go a little further to number 4, to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin, and fix the standard weights and measures. And we'll just hit the clause number 5, says to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. Remember, the current coin of the United States, not the Federal Reserve. Alright, and we'll hit Section 10 of the same article, and it does read, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coins, a tender in payment of debts. Remember, I'll